Hello, Good News Kids volunteers. It's Carrie here, and I wanted to give a little information on navigating the Bible. Our older kids, so our light seekers, that's divided into kindergarten through second grade and third through fifth grade. So basically kindergarten up to fifth grade, have what we call Bible navigation activities. And with that, we're trying to get students into God's Word. And it's not lost on me that some of us as volunteers may not feel super comfortable with navigating the Bible ourselves. So I wanted to give you a tutorial using the Bibles that we use with our kids on how to navigate the Bible and give you some verbiage that you can use and you can work with in order to help our kids then navigate the Bible. Sometimes the activities actually have you talk about, this is a book in the Old Testament versus the New Testament, but sometimes it doesn't. And so you may be confused on that or not be quite sure how to teach that. And so I'll talk about that, as well as show you some really cool things within the Bibles we use that will help you to navigate the Bible with our kids. So the first thing that I want to show you is at the very beginning of our Bible, we have a section called How to Use This Bible. And it really points out all the different features of this Bible, as well as this is very typical of most Bibles. So the page numbers, just like a typical book, at the top, you'll find the book name and the chapters that are covered on this actual page. I'll dive into that a little bit more in a minute here. You've got the section header. Just a side note, these were actually not in the ancient manuscripts of the Bible. They've been added over time. So just a little knowledge you can wow your kids with if you didn't already know that. Then we've got the chapter numbers. That as well was added. The verse numbers added as well. Even punctuation was added to the Bible, which I think is fascinating. All God's word though, so we can trust it. And then you'll also see some footnotes. In some Bibles, these notes are on the sides that tell you, this verse connects with another verse in the Bible. So that's kind of neat. If you're ever diving in and a student asks you what those are, you can tell them that we've added, or the creators of this specific Bible has added notes to help you kind of make connections throughout different verses and scriptures in the Bible. So I'm going to kind of show you all of these things in a deeper level here as we go through. But before I get to that, let me show you two other places that you are really going to want to pay attention to. As you keep going in our Bible, you will get to the table of contents. And most of our kids have wowed me, and I've actually told them, hey, tell your teacher thank you. They've done a really good job teaching you the ins and outs of a book, because a lot of the kids know that if they don't know where to find something, they can go to the table of contents. So you'll see that we have a table of contents in our Bible. It's got the Old Testament books as well as the New Testament books. So if you're ever wondering, or a kid asks you, hey, is this book of the Bible in the Old or New Testament? You might ask your students that, and you can double check yourself that you're correct if you tell them old or new, or a student might ask you that. And if you don't know, it's okay. Come to the table of contents and look and see, oh yeah, you know what? Esther is in the Old Testament. This table of contents works like every other table of contents. It gives you the book, the chapter title, the book of the Bible, and then it tells you what page it starts on. We also have on the table of contents some other information, such as the weights and measures chart. There are some maps and a concordance. So these are things that you can use as well when you are talking about the Bible. Now, in addition to the table of contents, if we go to this side, you'll see that they have the books of the Bible in alphabetical order. So sometimes you're looking in the table of contents and you're like, your eyes are just kind of looking over the chapter. So let's say I wanted to find James, and I'm looking in the New Testament, and I'm like, wait, where did it go? I don't see, your eyes are just skipping past it. Well, you can come over here to the alphabetical version and say, oh, there's James, because most of us know our alphabet, and then you know the page number. This is a great place to start to help your kids navigate to the book of the Bible that you are wanting them to go to. All right, let's continue on here, and I'm going to go more in depth into some of these sections of the Bible. We're going to go to the New Testament here for that purpose. And actually, I want to show you at the beginning of each book of the Bible, our Bibles and many Bibles have a feature that is really neat that as teachers of our students could be really helpful for us to kind of have some background knowledge on. So at the beginning of each book of the Bible, we're in the book of Luke right now, it asks you some questions and gives some answers. So who wrote this book? Why was it written? Who was it written to? Give me some, kind of a summary of what happens, and gives you even some of the more well-known Bible stories within that book of the Bible. So that's a really neat feature that if you want to kind of familiarize yourself a little bit more with that book of the Bible, you can do that. You could even do this if you've got some extra time and your kids are getting a little squirmy or the sermon's going over. You could say, hey, let's go find out more about the book of fill in the blank. And you could come and look at the beginning of that book and just kind of read through that with the kids. So let me show you some of those major features like I was talking about earlier, and I'm actually going to turn the page. I'm going to keep turning the page because I need this example. Here we go. So again, page numbers on the top. Then you have the book of the Bible with which chapters are on this page. So you'll notice that we see a large number 2. And that's what I always tell my students. The large numbers are the chapter numbers. And often by kindergarten through 5th grade, they understand the word chapter. So those are the chapter numbers. But you'll notice at the top, it has a 1 through 2. So before this large number 2, these are still verses in chapter 1. And that can sometimes confuse kids a little bit. They're like, well, why does it say 1 and 2? I only see a 2. You can kind of describe the fact that this at the top tells them all of the chapters that are on that specific page. This page houses some of chapter 1 and then chapter 2. Then I describe to them again that large number is the chapter number, and then that the smaller, teeny tiny numbers that are a little bit harder to find are the verse numbers. So a lot of times you'll tell a student, let's say you're talking about the week's memory verse, you tell your kids, okay, we're going to look for Luke 2:42. Luke chapter 2, verse 42. So your kids get to Luke. They get to chapter 2 by looking at the big number, and then you're going to tell them to look for the smaller number, verse 42. Chapter 2, verse 42. All these little numbers are verses. So I'm going to look for 42. Oh, we're getting there. Some of your younger kids or students that aren't quite ready for larger numbers might have trouble finding a number such as 42. It's a little bit bigger. So you might want to help them a little bit by telling them to look for a 4 and a 2 together. You can use some verbiage like that. But as we look, there's verse 42. Here's another great example of how both chapter 2 and 3 are on this page, but we're still looking in chapter 2. Anything before the big number is the chapter before it. So 2, verse 42, and then you could read that verse together, have a student read it, something like that. So using verbiage such as the book of the Bible, okay, so Luke, the chapter, large numbers are chapters, and the verse, small numbers are the verse, could really help your kids get a good idea of how to navigate the Bible. Something else that you could talk about with your kids, again, is that Old versus New Testament. And again, if you're not quite sure if a book is in the Old or versus New Testament, it tells you up here in the table of contents. If you're reading through a story and or a book in the Bible, and you'll notice that there is, some of these footnotes down here, feel free to use that if you have time to look up some other things in the Bible. Really give students a lot of opportunity to navigate through that Bible so that they can become familiar with it. I hope that helps. I hope it didn't seem too remedial. However, I really did want to put a tool in your hand that would provide you with a lot of information and basics for the Bible. I have amazing volunteers, and we are all at different paths in our walk with Christ and in our use of the Bible. So I hope this video was helpful in order to help give you some verbiage to use and to help navigate the Bible yourself and to navigate the Bible with your kiddos. Thanks so much. And please, as always, if you have any questions, come and ask me.